Karen felt like she was going to give birth, so her husband Frank quickly drove her to the hospital. Karen was in labor for 48 hours when she finally gave birth. But when the doctor saw what she gave birth to, he immediately turned pale. He did not know what to say. The babies were carried away and Karen was told they needed to run some tests to make sure the triplets was fine. After hours, the doctor returned. I'm so sorry. His whole face has gone red and he can barely look Karen or her husband Frank in the eye. Karen begged to see her triplets. Frank got a little angry as well. He got up and told the doctor nobody would stop him from seeing his babies. The doctor was shocked. Frank walked over to the research wing of the hospital. The doctor did not expect this, but he called security to make sure Frank was stopped. He was eventually escorted out of the hospital, but Karen had to stay. Karen was escorted to another room. She asked where Frank was, but he was sent home. They needed to get more information to determine what was happening with the triplets. Karen was asked a lot of questions about her pregnancy. Only her triplets were on her mind. The nurse then told Karen that it was important for the survival of her babies that she would answer. Karen had no idea it was this serious. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our upcoming stories. Karen was asked if she was sure that Frank was the father. Karen was shocked. How could they ask this of her? Of course Frank was the father. Karen did not tell the whole story. Karen started crying when she was pressured. A lot happened before and during the pregnancy. She did not want to tell anyone about it. Did she just put her children's life in danger due to her own dangerous lifestyle? Then Karen started talking about her past. Karen almost couldn't speak. It was so difficult for her to tell what she had done. She had a wild lifestyle before meeting Frank. Frank managed to get her to slow down, but it could have been too late. She got pregnant by surprise. During the pregnancy, she often had bad stomach cramps that she could not explain, but the doctor assured her every time that all was good. It was almost like they were trying to cover something up. They had to get to the bottom of this. The nurse had called a doctor back in. She asked him about the test results. However, the doctor who ran the tests was fired 2 weeks ago. Was this connected? The doctor kept reassuring Karen that the triplets were still fine, but they had to figure out if they could survive without being taken care of. The triplets were definitely a special case for the hospital. Then the doctor told Karen she herself had to stay during the night. She had a feeling it was better for her and her babies to work with the doctor. Karen also had something else in mind for that night that she did not tell anyone else about. Karen was obviously not locked into her room during the night, so she decided she would get up out of bed and look for her babies. Karen knows roughly where in the hospital they are keeping the babies. Karen sneaked her way to the floor above. Security was doing its rounds, so Karen had to be careful. Karen realized she needed a key card to enter the room. The only way to get the key card was in the security room. Karen had a feeling there might be some spare key cards there. By some miracle, she managed to get the key card. Karen quickly goes back to the baby room. She swipes the key card, then she let loose a sigh of relief. The door opened, now she had to find her children. This was difficult for her since she had not seen her child. Her babies did not seem to be here at all. When Karen sees her children, she actually starts crying. She heard footsteps in the hallway. The doctor and a couple of nurses came running inside. They saw Karen on the floor next to the unit with her triplets. Karen was in total shock when the nurses sat down next to her. She wants to know why her babies look like that. The doctor has no answers for her, so she gets even more upset. The doctor tells Karen that the results of the test will probably come tomorrow. Karen does not want to hear it and causes a scene. The doctor urges Karen to go to bed and get some sleep. She is extremely stubborn. The doctor has no other option than to force Karen to bed. That night, Karen can't sleep at all. She only thinks about what she had seen that night. This could be a true disaster for her and Frank. She wanted so bad for it to be the next day. The doctor would finally have some answers. She needs to assure the doctor that she can keep calm, and Frank has to be calm as well. Frank comes in and immediately starts confronting Karen. "What have you done?" The doctor urges Frank to be quiet and sit down. He had no right to attack Karen like this. He did not even have a clue what was going on. Frank wants to go, but he doesn't believe that these babies are his. Then she demands from the doctor that he does a test to see if Frank is the triplets' biological father. Frank was asked by the doctor to give a DNA sample. The doctor told Frank and Karen they had to wait a couple of hours for the test results to come in. The doctor had a closed envelope with him with the DNA results. Karen was asked to come back in. The doctor was nervous about this as well. If Frank turned out not to be the father, what could Karen possibly have done? When he opened the envelope, she turned pale. The doctor turned to Frank. He had thought it would have a different outcome, but Frank was concerned since the doctor was so in shock. The doctor said that they had found nothing extremely strange. Karen was extremely confused. Karen wants to see her children now. This time, the doctor agreed to walk Frank and Karen to the baby room. The doctor assures the couple that they are working around the clock to provide them with answers. Multiple doctors are working overtime in the lab to figure out what is going on with their children and the strange DNA results. The last thing that the doctors think of is a skin test. They take a sample of the skin of babies, which does not hurt. This could also take a few hours, but the doctors are hopeful that this will give them a definite answer. She suddenly claims their babies are probably swapped. Frank thought Karen had gone completely mad. The doctor tries to stop Karen, but eventually just lets her do her thing to come to a realization. She does not want to keep the babies because she says it isn't hers. Frank and the doctor let her rage on for a couple of moments. Then finally, Karen sits on the floor and just gives up. Frank then tries to encourage Karen to care for and keep the babies. The doctor told them the babies are healthy and didn't seem to suffer from something life-threatening. The only thing is that everything took longer than expected, and they will have the results tomorrow. Frank and Karen decide to indeed go home without the babies. They both thought long and hard that night about what they would do. The next day, everything would be revealed. They could hardly wait for so long, but they had to. They had been waiting in front of the phone since they woke up. Any minute the doctor could call. They tried calling themselves, but the doctor was too busy to come to the phone. They pick up and there is a lot of tension in the room. Karen puts the doctor on speaker. He starts talking about what they had done and reveals that they finally have an answer that they want to share to them in person. Karen and Frank quickly jumped in the car. During the whole drive to the hospital, Karen is very tense. She has no idea what to expect, but she feels like she will not like the answer that the doctor will give her. After a drive that feels like hours, they finally arrive. They enter the doctor's office, and the doctor tells them to sit down. The nurse brings the babies in and he tells them their triplets are perfectly healthy. They also have an explanation for why the babies are so small. Karen is now on the edge of her seat. The babies had no room to properly grow inside of Karen's belly. The doctor explains that the babies will actually slowly get better with time and they will grow up to be normal-sized children. Karen and Frank are relieved. The DNA was explained as well. They made the mistake of not taking Karen's DNA, so they did not have a match.